There was a series that people had loved to hate for some reason or another. It has been that one series that carried over from the fall and gone through in the winter season of 2013. And with it, there has been criticism at every step. At first, it was the hate toward the series' main character, and later, the writer of the series herself, Okudamari, has been called out into question. Whether you agree with the rather loud voices that resound on the internet or not, one thing is clear, that Nagi-Asu is a very polarizing show. The anime was produced by PA Works, who seems to be on a roll, dishing out a wealth of gems as late. Par the terrible Glass Lip, Nagi-Asu, however, seems to be the most polished of these shows and feels like a fresh breath air, which is funny because a lot of the show takes place underwater. The show is a slice of life fantasy and romance show in a nutshell. However, it takes these themes and fulfills them rather well and isn't without some original twists. The story follows a group of childhood friends who live in an underwater village called Shishiro. At the beginning of the story, we learn that their local middle school within the village closed down for reasons that weren't really explained. This leaves them no choice but to transfer to another middle school, which is actually on land and not in their village underwater. They had a hard time adapting to life on land because they constantly have to keep themselves hydrated or wet so that their enya, or what is described in the anime, the protective tissue on the surface of their skin, which were given to those who lived in the ocean by the sea god. In addition, during the first act of the series, the tension between the land dwellers and the sea people were at an all-time high. The group of friends went through so much because of this. But on the way that it's presented in such circumstances or situations, it actually helped them and each one of the characters of them to mature and grow up. The majority of the series details the subject of traditionalism, its pros and cons, and what effect it commonly has on the people who become defined by it. This concept is verbally alluded into countless times throughout Nagi-Asu when the characters talk about changing and what it means to them and whether it is a preference to them. This is shown more elegantly through Hikari, since the audience is given more details surrounding his dynamics and the in-depth thought that go into him deciding to change his preconceived notion. The show does a very good job with his character in general, because he's both relatable and full of traits that make him alluring to watch as he proceeds throughout his day. There's another idea that Nagi-Asu has floating around regarding racial relations. There are a few episodes in the first half that dedicate to replicating early 20th century United States to a degree. However, the whole ordeal is concluded casually, as if the writers were thinking,
"This is probably a good place to end on this,"
then thought nothing else of it. Still, the show does a decent job of depicting the in and out of internal racial habitants, and it still should be committed for at least that. Though the audience is shown a negative consequence of closed-mindedness and traditionalism by having the adults being the ones from whom racism is more prominently expressed, while the children emit a higher sense of understanding. The children are more open-minded and is related to them simply for having less experience in their life that edge them toward ethnocentrism. If I could allow myself to be a lazy reviewer, I would review this category with one word: good. Not bad, not great, but good. Unfortunately, it seems like every reviewer needs to go into detail, in order to prove our points and such yada yada yada. To be honest, I have absolutely nothing really bad to say about the characters of the show. I'm not going to go into details about all of them, but for the majority of the main three that I want to discuss, there really is nothing that much wrong or flawed against them, for the most part. They're complex, strong, real, heartwarming, and there's no real main character in the show who could have been erased while keeping the show going as well as it did. Their complexity went far and beyond anything I thought was ever possible within this anime, and it took me on an emotional ride full of smiles and tears before I knew it. Hikari is not afraid of rewriting his basic principles of perception, and this is particularly the reason that he is the protagonist, since protagonists are usually valuable when it comes to character casts. Hikari is no exception on this adage, and the audience is allowed to see everything glorious as well as everything shameful that comes along with the rebalancing of one's own mindset. He thinks in far larger terms from what he is normally capable of, often resorts in forceful acts within something that doesn't go precisely the way he wanted it to. He is different from a lot of typical anime protagonists in that he is an extrovert. Hikari does not adhere in any way to the passive, complacent reputation that anime protagonists have come to gather, especially since the rise of the moe style. The fact that Hikari is an extrovert brings a lot in the idea that nihilism and passivity are not the source of his internal conflicts. However, he does not present a rash, repetitive, uncompromising demeanor that tends to accompany personalities of his type and age. What surprised me though was seeing other characters like Chisaki and Miuna coming out of the shadow and stealing the spotlight away from Hikari, in order to get more character development than Hikari could ever had. The kind-hearted Miuna, from who we see the whole first half of the show as a small child, is completely different from the Miuna as a teenager, and yet it makes sense to see her become that way. Meanwhile, Chisaki, the mature friend, whose job in the anime is usually to help the main couple get together and hide her love, turns out to be anything but mature and breaks down into a weak and incredibly self-reflecting character with the potential of becoming an amazing person. The fact that these two characters, whom we see in the beginning to be simply side characters, come around and steal the spotlight for more than half the show, which shows the complexity of all the characters who are part of the show and showing the reality of life, in which everyone has a story to tell and goes through experiences which may or may not be similar to what these teenagers lived through. The show's emotional aspect is also worthy of exposure, though throughout all the character interactions, even though there is more than needed, we're still left with a sense of empathy with the characters because they're provided with everything necessary to make this feeling possible. The characters give intricate details about their perception, their past, etc., and this all leads to the action of the characters not ever feeling unwarranted or unexplained. The importance in understanding differing points of view can also be found throughout this, and I think that this is a key lesson that a lot of poorly written narratives fail to articulate upon. The main tool that Nagi-Asu utilizes to create drama and tension is of making characters infatuate with each other. It is in itself not a faulty idea, but the way in which the series kinda chooses to portray these intenses makes it come off as slightly immature and a bit shallow for storytelling. The characters rarely go beyond saying I like/love X when it comes to conveying these emotions, meaning that the show completely misunderstands the point of including romance in such of a narrative. When the characters show us why they have romantic interest in someone else, this allows the audience to comprehend more than both of the characters involved and can make everything feel more wholesome in return. Since Nagi-Asu in some situations does not do this fully, in which what is left is just a bunch of sensationalist drama that is equal parts of stale and juvenile. Yes, they are still teenagers, but I can say from certainty that most teenagers have some idea of deeper connection in mind that is fundamentally different from the binary infatuation and /friend meter that Nagi-Asu seems to have adopted. Even with this, the show still has some semblance of showing deep compassion between characters, if only for those just painful, flawed, brief moments. As I mentioned about the show's brief moments, Nagi-Asu has and does show cons of overdoing a lot of its crucial moments. This is evident by how the characters seem to frequently be talking as if the end of the world is always imminent. Having more scenes of characters calming the hell down and having more gradual shifts in emotion could have possibly fixed this issue for me. Another element that I will mention, but I see more of a subjective flaw to other people, is that there is an overuse of characters crying. It is a good assumption that possibly the writers became lazy and thought that words and voices of the characters alone would be enough to evoke a sober response from the viewer. Me personally, I didn't really see this much of an issue, but I have heard from other reviewers and other people that thought of it as a little bit of a flawed moment for the characters alone and the overarching emotion of the romance. Me didn't see it much for that. I thought of it as a calm and rational response to some and most of the conflicts that the characters are approached with. Yet there are some that I do feel probably were overdone a slight bit. PA Works delivers exceptionally stellar animation in Nagi-Asu, and there's not much I can really say. It's just very well done with its beautiful lighting, its wonderful detail and palette of colors, and it's safe to say that the water is probably the most difficult things to really animate in anime in general, and the fact it is done so well here that it makes the show's scenery look marvelous to look at, and the reminder of the animation doesn't miss a beat at all, and I literally cannot think of a single part out of all the 26 episodes I watched in which anything looked unnatural or choppy. Unless, if you're some people who think soup underwater seems like a really annoying thing, or they just want to nitpick saying why do people have roofs underwater, then you got a problem. Think about that. It's fucking dumb. You know, I just can't help but to notice the beautiful music that is used within this anime. Yes, the openings were just decent, there was some cheery pop music, but the director of the music also directed Anohana, Anonetsu, and Toradora, which all have these vibe of mellow peacefulness, simplicity, depressing, and even slightly dramatic tracks that flow very well and work according to the animation style that is presented. The music also includes noticeable orchestra guitars, flowing violins, soft pianos, cello playing, eerie tones to foreshadow, depressing, and vice versa cheery tones. This music is just really easy to the ears and listen to, and it's very well used for a nice fitting anime. Nagi-Asu is a decently subjective and entertaining anime that keeps the attention of the viewer throughout the entire running time by the use of a variety of methods. It fulfills its ideas about traditionalism well and does a great job of having the audience connect with its characters who are flawed but are still likable. It's still a scattered brain in a lot of areas because it uses far too many characters and ideas than it is coverable for a 26 episode series. It's overdramatic in a lot of parts. The romance endures are forced on more than they should be, and there isn't a whole lot of them in retrospect. Characters crying too much and too soon leads to desensitize of tears is in general of this entire show. The production value is outstanding though, and it should not be overlooked. Nagi-Asu has flaws or maybe nitpicky things that some people might not enjoy, but it's still a pretty good anime to enjoy and watch. Now for the final verdict on my usual scoring that I do for all my anime reviews, from story, characters, animation, sound, and personal enjoyment. Nagi-Asu, my personal favorite slice of life anime, gets an overall score of 7.4 out of 10. And I definitely recommend this to slice of life fans to watch and enjoy the miracles of a slice of life supernatural element of an anime. Anyways, this does wrap up my review of Nagi-Asu. If you guys did enjoy this, please hit that like button down in the description below, and as well, comment down below. Give me your thoughts and opinions of this anime, as well any kind of other videos or animes you guys would like me to watch in the near future, and I'll be sure to do it. Anyways, of course, this does wrap up my review, and I'll see you guys next time on my next anime-related video. Peace, guys.